Today on Mr. Media, I'll talk to comedian Jonathan Katz, whose voice you'll recognize from Comedy Central's long-running Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist. He's back with a new online animated series called Explosion Bus. Stick around. This episode of Mr. Media is one of Americans' new benefits under the federal health care mandate. Mr. Media is recorded live before a studio audience of long-suffering psychotherapy patients who really need to switch to doctors whose lobbies are not in Squigglevision in the new media capital of the world, St. Petersburg, Florida. Jonathan Katz is neither a doctor nor a cartoon, but he has been known to be one entertaining funny man. His old show on Comedy Central, Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist, was perhaps best known for two elements during its 6-year run: its squiggly animation and the remarkable list of guests who sat on Dr. Katz's couch, including Ray Romano, Conan O'Brien, Jon Stewart, and Louis C.K. Now Katz is back with a new animated show, Explosion Bus. Like Dr. Katz, Explosion Bus was created by Tom Snyder. No, not that Tom Snyder. The new show co-stars comedian Tom Leopold, whose writing credits include Seinfeld and Cheers. So what is Explosion Bus? Well, I have to admit I'm having a little bit of a hard time figuring that out myself. I've watched several first season episodes and had a sneak peek at excerpts from season 2. And like Dr. Katz, it is a model of subtlety and irony. Explosion Bus seems to satirize the reality TV conceit of the moment found in America's Got Talent, The Voice, and American Idol, in that everyone has talent and could potentially be famous. But it goes in a lot of different directions from there, including being a reality show within a reality show and one with real viewer submissions. Fans from Season 1, incidentally, will notice a change in animation style in Season 2. You can check it out for yourself at explosionbus.com or on YouTube. Meanwhile, the doctor is in, and I'm hoping he can make sense of it all for me. Jonathan Katz, Dr. Katz, welcome to Mr. Media.
Thank you so much, Bill. I hate to start by disagreeing with you.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But I think, this was always one of the things about Dr. Katz that was always up for grabs in terms of promoting the show or investing time and emotions in the show. Because I think the show is about a therapist and his son. I think that the diehard Dr. Katz fan is more excited about the relationship between Dr. Katz and Ben than they are about his famous guests.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily disagree.
Having said that, fuck you and goodbye. No.
Oh, man, that was great. I'm sure I had that coming. Thank you.
No. It's a very subtle point, but I think that's the stuff that Tom and I love, is the relationship between those two guys. And the other thing that I think distinguished it was the pacing of the show, which was painfully slow compared to most cartoons and compared to life itself.
Right.
And the voices were not cartoon voices, but real voices.
Mm-hmm. Now, I just want to say in my own minor defense that all I was referring to was what it was perhaps best known for. I didn't say it was what it was best at, but people do know it for. And even now, I mean, the last reference I heard was Mark Maron talked about it a few weeks ago and was talking about how you had these incredible guests, these comedians. And, of course, yeah. I know he was one of them, but, I mean, Louis C.K. And guys, you were ahead of the curve on a lot of these guys, too. You gave them platforms where a lot of people didn't quite know who they were yet.
Right, that's true.
So in that regard, and the Squigglevision, everyone remembers the Squigglevision.
Now you should say, so fuck you.
I'm the host. I would never do that.
Oh, that's right. You can't do that.
No, I would never do that. I may send you an email later that says something to that effect, but no, I would never say that to your face. I'd do it behind your back, like I'm supposed to.
The nerve. The unmitigated audacity. And I'm not talking about the program. It's funny that Obama's book is called The Audacity of Hope. I never made the connection between the software and his book.
Well, he's a tech guy. Most people don't know that about him.
I wonder if it was inspired by the software.
One can only hope. So, now, is it okay if I think of you? We're doing this by phone, obviously. If I think of you at the other end of the phone as being permanently in Squigglevision, that there's like lines around you and a little bit of subtle movement.
That's perfect. That's perfectly fine.
Hmm.
As long as you don't mind me thinking of you as your home being black and white.
Actually, it is.
And very still.
Actually,
really,
by comparison, that's very correct. Are you sure we're doing this on the phone?
Because that was one of the magical things about the animation is that the characters were in color and the backgrounds were in grayscale, and no one actually moved. It was just an illusion of movement. and if you watch the show again, you'll notice that nobody actually goes from point A to point B. It was just edited like a film.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Establishing shot and then someone else's point of view.
And speaking of the animation, let me ask you about the animation on. First of all, why do another animated show? Why not do live action? Why not see and action being a relative term?
Well, I think it has to do with money, our expertise, and this is not as sexy as I would like to think. It's my own disability. I mean, I'm a guy living with MS, so using my body is more challenging than using my voice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Now, was that the case? I mean, have you?
It wasn't the case with Dr. Katz. I got MS from Squigglevision. So I was diagnosed in 1997. And now I'm helping you talk about Dr. Katz because we did win the Peabody Award, and I was given an Emmy Award for voiceover performance, competing with Glenn Close and somebody else. No, I'm just bragging.
Bragging is okay.
No.
So, see, now that was interesting. I didn't know about the MS, actually, until today, and then I wondered if the Squigglevision reflected that, but that wasn't present at the time.
No. In fact, people used to ask me if the Squigglevision was supposed to represent the emotional trouble that everybody was in. And I said, yeah, plus it's cheap. The truth is, it's not that cheap.
Really?
It's more expensive to make an animated show. If you did an animated half hour for TV, it costs more money than doing a live action show, depending on who the talent is.
Is there something to be said for irony here that in that show you seem to be shaking, and now you have the MS? It just seems bizarre, doesn't it?
If I had Parkinson's, it would be more bizarre.
Yeah,
but it is unlikely. I don't know, bizarre.
That's very strange. Well, and then just following the thread of the animation for a second. So season 1 of Explosion Bus has a certain style of animation, but season 2 is a different style. Why change? Oh, wait, well, let me guess. It's cheaper. No.
No, I just got a text while you were asking that question, so I got distracted. The reason it changed had to do with making it more, and here's a word that I learned. I'll tell you, I learned this word from another TV producer. It's more telegenic.
Oh.
Might play better on TV or even on the web. or on a big screen. You know, when Dr. Katz first debuted, we had a screening at a movie theater in about 20 minutes from here, and we was shocked to see how awful and pixelated it looked on the big screen. And Tom Snyder used to say that some people would find Squigglevision actually made them nauseous, but for every 10 people who said that, there were 12 people who didn't mind it very much.
Is that kind of like years ago there was that story that Mary Hart, I think, on Entertainment Weekly, that there was a report of somebody who every time they saw her, they had like a seizure?
I'm so glad you didn't say an erection.
I think it would have been better to report that you had an erection to Mary Hart than a seizure.
No, I'm just worried about your daughter still being in the room.
No, actually, she's in the other room. Thank you for bringing that up, though.
That's pretty funny.
So that's the reason for the change. That makes sense.
Yeah, and the first season, it really was drawn like a graphic novel. It was really, you couldn't tell unless you really became a student of the show who was speaking, because no one's mouth moved. You just had to really learn the characters. And it was also longer form, which, a lot of this is just guessing what we're doing.
Well, of course. That's what conversation is about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, I noticed, and of course, the advantage of the episodes being 5 minutes and being online is you can back up. Because I noticed I was still trying to get the hang of whose voice was who and who was who, and so sometimes I would go back and just watch it again until I was sure of things. By the way,
Tom Leopold is not a comedian. So I don't think he's a comedy writer. I think you describe him that way. But he's also, such an incredibly odd and brilliantly funny guy. He's, you know the phrase a wordsmith?
Mm-hmm, sure.
He's like a phrase smith. I'll give you an example. Tell me anything, Bob, that's changed recently.
The weather has changed a great deal.
I'll tell you what has not changed, my friend, is my respect for your talent. That's the kind of thing that Tom Leopold will say within the first 5 minutes you meet him.
Well, hell, let's get him on the show, because my current guest told me to fuck off a little while ago.
You should talk to him. He's really wonderful to talk to. We found him because he's Harry Shearer's secret weapon. When Harry Shearer used to do something called The Show.
Right. His podcast.
It was broadcast on KCRW and then became a podcast. And Tom Leopold was like his go-to guy for doing very complex audio experiments. And Tom Leopold's gift is that he doesn't adjust his voice. He will be a man, he'll be a woman. On my podcast, he plays both Barry White and Helen Reddy. Not in the same episode. But there's no adjustment to his voice, just what he says.
Wow. I'd like to hear him go back and forth and have a conversation between the two of them.
Yeah, I don't think he's capable of that.
Well, so did you know Tom Leopold, that is, before this show? Have you?
No, we worked together on, Tom started creating a show called The Dick and Paula Celebrity Chat Show.
I've heard of that.
Which was on FX for a season.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a talk show where all the guests were dead people. Like we would have Charles Darwin as a guest.
Like the old Steve Allen show.
What's that?
Like the old Steve Allen show, Meeting of the Minds, where he'd have dinner with Henry VIII and Mark Twain.
No kidding. Oh, and I wrote a book called The To-Do List of the Dead. So, you know, you have to acquire rights. But that Dick and Paul was a good show, and Tom Leopold would come on as he came on as the acting coach for the Menendez brothers.
Oh my God! Okay.
And remember, one of the things he said was, they're two very different kinds of actors. Lyle is more results oriented. But
oh man,
and Paul Revere was always bummed at the last minute. He was always in the green room, but he doesn't get to go on.
He's that comedian at the end of the show, right?
Right. And I played Johnny Storm, the musical director.
I'm sorry I missed that. I had heard of it, but I didn't. I guess it kind of came and went in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now I want to go look for that.
I don't know if it's commercially available, but we can send you some.
All right. Now, with Explosion Bus, are you and Tom? Are you? Is there some improvisation going on? Or is it?
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? You might be able to see that as. I'm not sure it's on my site on JonathanKatz.com, but it might be up there. I know I've uploaded some older shows I've done with Tom, including something called Alpha Force, which stars Tom Leopold, among others. You get to, and that was a hybrid, part animation and part live action. The parts that were drawn with the backgrounds, the actors were live.
I'll go back to your site. I was on your site last night. I'll go back and take a look and see if I can find it up there. So let's talk about Explosion Bus for a minute, though, in terms of the concept. I mean, I was honest in my introduction. I mean, I said that it seemed there's a general narrative, but it kind of goes off sort of octopus-like in a lot of different directions from one to the next. Is that
Right.
a fair statement?
Squid, I think, would be more accurate.
Squid, thank you.
But no, I know what you mean. I think the general conceit about that show is it's these two delusional guys who think that they can put American Idol out of the fictitious version of American Idol called Monster Talent out of business, and they have none of the qualifications to do it.
Becomes apparent pretty quickly.
Right, and the first thing to do is, of course, they buy a bus, which they inherited from a runaway elderly couple. Elderly runaways is a very funny term created by Tom Snyder. And then, within that conceit, there are all kinds of relationships that are developing between the people who are traveling on that bus, who work on the show. Between my character, John Gold, and the assistant I hired named Katie, whose real name is Mish Whitaker. Between me and Leo Huckstep, who is this, I'm going to say the gayest straight man in show business. No, the gayest straight guy in show business. Okay. Some people didn't realize he's married and has 2 kids. But he's more comfortable playing a sort of sexually ambiguous guy than anyone I know.
More so than, say, Jim Parsons on The Big Bang Theory?
No.
Okay. All right. It just, I'm just trying to frame things. That's all.
Yeah, and so then there's this character voiced by a guy named Chris Cook, named Burton. Chris Cook is saying, I'm not sure I'm getting that right, but Burton is this guy who both Leo and John Gold knew when they were in high school, and they were mean to the guy. And so of course they approached him because he lives on his father's estate, and they need money. Am I wandering too far astray?
No, it's fine. It's fine. But I was wondering, I mean, well, actually, let me come back to something you and I talked about as we were getting ready to actually have this conversation. I want to drop in here. You were telling me that a little reality crossed over here, real reality, and that someone who tried out for or submitted a tryout.
Well, they auditioned for the Explosion Bus, and then, of course, I got on the show, which is not that difficult. But then the audition for America's Got Talent in front of Howard Stern, Howie Mandel, and Ozzy Osbourne's wife, whose name I could never remember.
Sharon
Osbourne. And they all love this guy. He is a very clever young comedian.
Who you discovered.
Yeah.
I think in this world you have to take credit where you can grab it.
Well, the other person I discovered was a guy who said to me one day, he posed the question, how many roads can a man walk down? And I said, Robert, try putting that to music.
He's one of yours too, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Hey, you're all over the place. That's amazing.
Been around for a while.
Yeah. Seen a lot of things. Been a lot of places.
Been hurt so many times I'm starting to like it.
Yeah, that may be going a going a song too far. And you know, I want to say that for people who haven't seen it yet, Explosion Bus has something in common with Star Wars.
No, you lost me here. What is it we have in common?
Star Wars: The Clone Wars, George Lucas's animated series, is also 5-minute bursts of story.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so, you know.
Yeah. Telling a story in that short a time is really challenging. Although I reminded Tom Snyder that when my daughter Julia was 16, we did a show for NBC called Julia's Point of View, which we developed for primetime, but ended up being 13 30-second pieces that aired on Saturday morning. And Tom had to figure out how to tell a story in 30 seconds. And he said, you know how most stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Mm-hmm. Well, there's no room for the middle in that. But that was so he's a very good storyteller, and he uses both audio and animation to tell stories.
Now,
he edits all the audio.
Well, you were telling me before we started about how Tom had this whole other career before he got involved with you and Dr. Katz, and he also created the series Home Movies, the animated series Home Movies, and some other things. He was involved with Apple Computer in the early days. Is that what you were telling me? Yeah. He was. This is my favorite Tom Snyder story, but the guy years before I met him, when he was a teenager, he'd been corresponding with IBM because he was curious about how computers work. And he came home from school one day, and there was a truck parked outside his house delivering a computer because they were the size of what might be your kitchen now. Right.
And this was, I think, at age 14 or so. So he's an educator and a kind of a scientist. And actually had a show for ABC called Science Court, which was an educational animated show.
And you said that he was one of the guys who famously signed the inside of was it the original Macintosh or was it the Lisa? I
think it was the Apple II, maybe.
The Apple II, maybe.
No. It goes back to the first. Before that, it was the first computer that Macintosh made.
Well, there was the first one that I think got distributed. Well, it was the Lisa, and then there was the Apple IIc and the IIe. I'm trying to remember now. I know the story is told in the Walter. Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, they described why Jobs had all the people who worked on that first computer sign the inside, and then and what was odd was that everyone who worked on that first computer signed the inside, and it was and their signatures were copied into every computer made, although no one could open the computer.
And then they got fired.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you couldn't open the computer, so no one actually saw it, but he believed that they deserved the recognition of having their names in every one of those computers.
It's an odd kind of attribution, you know.
Yeah.
I guess it says more about Steve Jobs than it does about anything else.
Well, so we've talked a bit about Explosion Bus. I do want to ask you about your career between the end of Dr. Katz and the start of Explosion Bus. Have you, and I guess currently, are you still actively doing stand-up?
I do it occasionally. I perform when Wendy Liebman comes to town, a wonderful comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I do mostly benefits. In fact, I did a benefit last night for survivors, a benefit I had done the week before.
There was a little beat there for a second while it sunk in.
That's okay. But I also, I know I'm going to sound too young for this, but I got the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Boston Comedy Festival, and I did a set that night. But mostly and I also performed with John Benjamin. He had a TV show called John Benjamin Has a Van on Comedy Central, and then the show was canceled, and he started working live with a show called John Benjamin Has a Tour. And I appeared as a guest one night when he came to my neighborhood.
And should we mention that he's also the voice of Archer on FX?
Yeah, he's an Archer on FX. He's also on a show called Bob's Burgers on Fox. He's the guy who, I always say he's the guy who taught me how to improvise, and I think it's true. Because when I started doing Dr. Katz, my background was stand-up comedy, and he could see my jokes coming a mile away. And he would just take them in a totally different direction. And it introduced me to a different style of comedy.
Now,
we would get in this zone occasionally. But I think this must be either somebody breaking into a home or a housekeeper.
Or a housekeeper breaking into a home.
You know. But, hey, Bongo, come here, boy. Hit dog. Or a dog walking by.
Oh. What kind of dog do you have?
He's a miniature poodle, but my friend calls him substandard.
I will not make any poodle remarks. I'm sorry, I will not go there. Well,
so you asked me about my career after Dr. Katz and before the Explosion Bus.
Yeah.
Was that the time frame you were talking about?
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of what's been going on.
It was kind of, Dr. Katz was so wildly popular in Los Angeles, and it was a complete surprise to me that I went from Dr. Katz to making a deal with DreamWorks, and then another deal with Paramount, just to develop TV shows. And the only one that actually got on the air was the show that I'm not that proud of, called Raising Dad, starring Bob Saget. It aired for 22 episodes. And once you really know that Bob Saget is your star, they're kind of built-in limitations. And I kind of like the guy, and I think he's funny, but you just know it's not going to be Mad Men.
Right. But
it could be Curb Your Enthusiasm.
But Saget, on the other, I understand what you're saying, but Saget, on the other hand, has had this remarkable run of success with TV. I mean, his the family, whatever the hell, the family show he did on ABC ran forever, and then the America's Home Videos. And as someone said the other day, when they get to the end of How I Met Your Mother, The bigger question is not who the woman is, who's the mother, but why is it Bob Saget's been playing the narrator for all these years?
That's very funny. Yeah, that is an odd question. Why not give someone else a job? Somebody who might be out of work.
Yeah, but I mean, he seems to pick very well. I mean, in things that he's involved in, and that from everything I've heard, that are so antithetical to his own personality. It's just it's remarkable.
Yeah. He's actually a very sweet guy who is deceptively tall. My favorite part of doing that show, Raising Dad, was I was staying at a hotel in Los Angeles, and I would say to the front desk every night, "Please hold all my calls and listen to my wife or Bob Saget." Just a phrase I never thought I would say.
Well, speaking, this is a good segue for this. Speaking of comedians, I want to ask you, you're one of these guys who, over the years, other comedians speak very highly of, and maybe sometimes to the point where there may be people who, if they don't know Dr. Katz, professional therapist, they may not be familiar with you. But I mean, there have been guys. Belzer was like that for a long time. He was a New York comedian that all the comedians seemed to, really dote on. But really he wasn't really that well known outside of New York. And then I think more recently, the guy who fits that description might be Louis C.K., who has really exploded. Where did your connection with all these guys come from? How did that's?
Well, I started doing stand-up in New York, so I knew a lot of guys like Don Herrera, who is maybe he's one of my favorites, and he's a recurring guest on Dr. Katz. And then I moved to Boston, and I got to know a whole bunch of other comedians. Louis C.K. I met in Cambridge when he was just starting out as a stand-up. And in fact, I was telling my nephew, who's writing an article about him for the Paris Review.
Wow!
I don't get it, but that one of Louis' first jokes was this is what he would say on stage. My grandfather actually was one of the first. Oh, my grandfather invented the phrase, "Give me a big guy," which is, such a brave joke to tell for a new comedian.
Yeah.
He's moved into much more comfortable yet courageous territory.
Mm-hmm. And has he? I guess the thing I was curious to get your perspective on is, now you go back with him quite a ways, and I know he was on Dr. Katz, I guess in about 96, 97, somewhere around there. He's really he's become a completely different persona in terms of the public eye the last couple of years. I know my wife and I'd gotten from my wife's birthday a couple of years ago. She loved Ricky Gervais, and I got her tickets to his opening night at the theater at Madison Square Garden. And we went, and Louis C.K. opened up, and we really didn't know who Louis was, but he blew us away. It was like, wow, and we just sat through Louis C.K., and this guy was just hysterical, and we still have Ricky Gervais. What an incredible evening! And
how did the two of them play together? Because I can't imagine he would be that easy to follow. Although maybe he was respectful that way, probably.
I don't think there was he went out there and killed. I mean, he wasn't holding anything back. And we saw him, I guess, a year or two later at Tampa Theater, and completely different material, which was astonishing. And but along the same vein. But I think the two of them are friends. And I think Louis has done Ricky's show, and Ricky was on Louis' show subsequent to that, or maybe around that time. But my question, I guess, what I'm wondering is, has Louis' act changed, or have the public's taste just caught up to him?
Oh no, his act has changed so dramatically, and he'll just go so far exploring something that's this long to begin with. I mean, I don't know.
That's so true.
When I saw him in Philadelphia, I saw him live. I took my daughter and her husband and my wife to see him, and the four of us sat through him miming, masturbating for 5 minutes. But I don't know if you saw if that's something he still does, but he's just talking about the gesture that men make to sort of indicate that they might be. It's what a comedian named Don Gavin used to call, give it a gank. So he would make that hand gesture.
Right.
And he said, well, the problem with making that gesture is that you can't just do that. You have to finish. So for 5 minutes, you watch him masturbating on stage without exposing himself.
Right.
And that's something that he wouldn't have done as a young comedian.
Interesting. Is it that he got bolder, or did he get smarter, or?
I think he got older, then he got bolder, and he got he talks about things that really genuinely mean something to him. Some of my favorite stuff that he does is about the Catholic Church, or about his own experience with religion. And that's something that I don't think a 20-year-old kid would do. He also has an ex-wife and 2 children, which certainly changes somebody's perspective on comedy and on life.
Yeah, the bitterness becomes real.
Yeah, but I suspect he's a really good dad, although I worry about his kids when they're older hearing what he says about them.
Yeah,
that's somebody's different.
Of course. This show is nothing but recorded live.
Sorry about that.
All right, well, so let's come back. Go ahead.
By the way, that was FedEx delivering my daughter's iPhone, which is, in Newton, Massachusetts, it's acceptable to wake up your 20-year-old daughter after 3 o'clock as long as she has a new iPhone.
So have you done that now? Is she awake?
No.
Oh, you'll do that after the call, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I assume that she's still asleep because she's a college student on break?
Yes, exactly.
That's we got that with the high school student here in our house. She'll sleep till 12, 1, 2 o'clock, whatever it takes.
Yeah. I sleep much too much myself. I think they hear somebody walking in. Mandy? Let's see. I think it's not you. I'm just doing an interview.
That's funny. So am I. Well,
where were we?
We were talking about Louis C.K. and we were talking about how he had kind of grown and changed. And
right.
There was another guy, I think, sort of in your circle that I similarly wanted to ask you about. A guy who also who was on Dr. Katz and you knew before. And who's also, his career has just blown up in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's Mark Maron.
Right. Mark, it's funny. Do you feel like he's kind of legitimized the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And he's been on Mr. Media with me early on. It's been about 2 years since he was on, and had him on. And as far as what he's done with the podcast and the way he talks to people and proceeds. I mean, I think he's terrific, and I did not know him really at all before he started doing the podcast, and I think that's been the case for a lot of people.
He's one of the guys I met working in Boston because we would do the local scene together, the club scene. In fact, I think I'm one of 3 or 4 guys who gave him a pasta maker when he got married.
Which time?
The first time.
Okay.
You would never give a guy a pasta maker for a second marriage.
Oh, no, is that wrong?
Yeah. The weirdest thing about meeting Mark Maron is that my sister lives in Puerto Rico, and I went down there a few years ago and I met someone who said, "Oh, you know my nephew, Mark." And Mark Maron has no idea who she is. He denies having any relatives in Puerto Rico.
Wow. Yeah, has Maron changed a lot? Same question, really, about that I asked about Louis C.K. Has he changed a lot, or has his public perception changed?
I think he's just really enjoying success. I think that I don't know if Louis has the time to do that. Because Louis performs, he makes a TV show that he writes, directs, and edits.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned about this from Sarah Silverman. I didn't know that he edits every single second of that show. He brings it back to his apartment, does it on his computer. The show I'm talking about now is Louis.
Louis, right, on FX, sure.
Right. But
well, he views himself more as a filmmaker than than a comedian.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the name of the movie he made a few years ago, which was, I guess, an experiment. He also used to run the Conan O'Brien show.
He was a writer on there, wasn't he?
Right, but he outgrew that role and became the showrunner.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I might have made that up.
Oh, okay. just leave that moment of doubt. Yeah. That's good. I can live with that. But back to Maron. I mean, it seems like he started. A lot of people discover him the last couple of years because he has all these great guests. You know, people who you recognize and you're interested in. They sit in his garage or they do the live show, which I know you've done. And you get to know these people in a very different way, and then you find out, oh, Maron's a comedian, and he goes out and he tours and he does his gig, but it just seems like he's perceived so differently today than he was when he was only doing stand-up or only doing radio.
I think I haven't seen him. I didn't know that he still does stand-up. Does he do that?
Oh yeah, I think he's out every week still.
Really?
Yeah.
Because, one of the things that he does so well is listen. And nobody can't get on stage in front of 500 people and just listen. People will start to walk out.
Well, he listens very well in the podcast, but he's certainly got the stand-up down. I would guess, and I didn't know him. Like I said, I didn't know of him in '96, let's say, when you were doing Dr. Katz. But it seems like he knows who he is today. And usually the stand-ups who make it really big seem to be guys or women who know who they are better than anyone else.
Right. I would characterize his comedies, I used to anyway, as angry.
Mm-hmm.
He would need to get to a place where he was angry before he could be funny. And whereas I'm more of a maybe mildly annoyed. But I don't think he needs to do that anymore. I think he, like you're saying, he's more comfortable with himself, has a better sense of who he is.
Mm. But I think he still portrays himself as a kind of a bitter guy, kind of an angry guy, quick to anger. But he does it. He's definitely created a persona, or he's further developed that persona. But it's interesting. And you and he, I want to point out, I know that you did the Funny or Die, the Noah's Ark together, where you were Noah and he was the guy who cleaned up after meals.
Oh yeah, and that's part of the series that was developed by a guy named Steve Levinson, who somebody I met through another guy who's not Steve Levinson, but I he was doing all of these shows for what used to be a website called Next Book. And they're all biblical stories retold with animation and a comedic perspective. Uh-oh. That's not a good sign. I'm using the phrase comedic perspective.
well, maybe. Let me.
That would be like me on saying this next hilarious observation.
And then hilarity ensued.
Right.
Well, maybe that's a good point for me to say that, folks. let me save poor Dr. Katz here. You can see comedian Jonathan Katz back in animated form in the online cartoon series Explosion Bus. It's free to watch at explosionbus.com, or you can search it on YouTube. And you also have your personal website, which is jonathankatz.com.
Katz.com, and also you can get the Explosion Bus that way as well.
Okay, it's on your site as well. Do you do Twitter or Facebook, any of that kind of social media?
I'm a serious tweeter.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of why this seemed funny to me yesterday, but I tweeted that I don't believe in heaven or hell, but I've been to Fresno. Sometimes I just like the way things scan.
It may sound like a good line. It may not necessarily always be the funniest line, but it reads well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Well, and I actually subscribed to your Twitter feed last night, just for the record.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Well,
I will follow you back.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and you'll get to see yourself mentioned within days.
It's really a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you luck with your 15-year-old.
Thank you. I'll take all the luck I can get, donations, whatever's available. Jonathan Katz, thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Media today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That's something I say at the end of an interview.
I like that. I think I'd go with that. You can see and hear almost 1,000 Mr. Media interviews by visiting our main site, mrmedia.com, mrmedia.com. Or check out the more than 200 video interviews on the Mr. Media radio site on YouTube. And I'd sure appreciate if you'd show some love for Mr. Media's advertisers, including Stitcher. Apple named Stitcher a top 5 news app of 2011. It's a free mobile app for your smartphone or tablet that lets you listen to your favorite shows and discover the best of news, entertainment, and sports on demand. You can listen whenever you want to more than 5,000 shows, get customized recommendations, and discover what your friends are listening to. My own list of Stitcher favorites is pretty eclectic. I start my day with an hour of MSNBC's Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. Then it's the latest 2-minute update from the Onion News Network. After that, I'll listen to WTF with Mark Maron, Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, HBO's Real Time with Bill Maher, and excerpts from E's Chelsea Lately and The Soup with Joel McHale. Also in regular rotation on my Stitcher playlist, the BS Report with ESPN's Bill Simmons, the TechCrunch headlines, and the Don Geronimo Show. The latest episodes of each show, whether originating from broadcasts, cable TV, radio syndication, or podcasts, are continuously updated. Stitcher is a free app for your iPhone, iPad, Kindle, Fire, BlackBerry, Droid, and more. And show your support of Mr. Media by getting, did I mention it's free? The app at stitcher.com/Mr. Media. That's stitcher.com/MR Media. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. We're also supported by Audible. Check out Audible's 30-day trial membership and download the audiobook version of the book everyone's been talking about, 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Sign up for your free trial today at audible.com/radio. Again, audibletrial.com/radio. And finally, if you need a disc jockey for a wedding, bar mitzvah, corporate event, or just a big old party, please consider calling 1-800-DIAL-DJs, the party authority for all your party entertainment needs. You can call 1-800-DIAL-DJs or go to their website, 1-800-DIAL-DJs.com, and tell them Mr. Media sent you. And thanks for listening.
Hey, folks, this is comedian Mark Maron, and what the fuck? Why are you listening to Mr. Media Radio?